But my beats, they are hard.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the BCSN Sports Wrap, our week number 10 recap show. My name is Brian Fulford, and joining me, as always, my man AD Drew. AD, what's good, man? How was your weekend?
Interesting, very interesting. A lot of interesting games, a lot of interesting personal stuff. We're just going to say interesting.
All right, good adjective, usually. Well, it was a pleasure getting a chance to work with you. We got to, hopefully, those of you who are listening to the show, you got a chance to watch our broadcast on Friday night as we were in Jacksonville for the Tuskegee-Edward Waters game. And that was an interesting game, to say the least. Of course, those of you who listened to us long enough now, you know that AD also, besides being an alumnus of Florida A&M University, he has ties and is an alum of Tuskegee as well, and has done some coaching in Tuskegee. So just a general thought, what was it like getting a chance to kind of see your school play again?
Well, first of all, working the game for Edward Waters and in the Edward Waters booth, and everybody in the Edward Waters booth knowing that I was a Tuskegee alum, when certain things happened throughout the game, people would look at me to see what my reaction was, especially down the stretch when Edward Waters was making the comeback, and they were within they had the decision to go for two or to go for one to tie the game up, and there were a few sly comments, but it was all in fun and game. Good sportsmanship, good gamesmanship.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It's always hard to when you see a school that you have very close ties to remain neutral.
No, totally understand that. So, yeah, we will be talking about the SIAC and that game along with some of the other games. We're also going to get into the CIAA, and it's interesting that in both of those conferences we have some interesting scenarios that came out of this past weekend. Both conferences still have games that will shape what their conference championship games will look like, and they also have games that will factor into the Division II playoffs. And then we'll get into, later in the show, the FCS side, looking at the MEAC and SWAC, as one of the big games from the MEAC was actually decided. And we'll kind of talk about all of the scenarios that go into what's going on with the MEAC. I don't know if the SWAC is a little more settled. I think there's still some various scenarios that can play out over in the SWAC. And we'll go from that, and then let me see, what else am I missing? Let me tell the people how they can find us, how they can interact with us. Our show, the Black College Sports Network, you can find on Twitter and Instagram at MyBCSN1, the number 1. That's where you can also find us on Facebook. And, of course, if you're on Facebook, we ask you to like our page, our BCSN Sports Wrap page, as well as the Black College Sports Network. On the web, we are located at www.mybcsn.net. And if you want to find us individually, you can find me on Twitter at DRB365. And if you want to find AD, You can find him at BCSN Drew, DRW. All right, Drew.
EW.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
You left the E out.
Did I really? Okay.
Yes, you
Drew.
did.
Okay, BCSN DREW. There you go.
There you go.
All right, so one of the games, we're going to start in the CIAA, just a quick look back over the weekend. Our featured game from the CIAA was Shaw at Winston-Salem State, and it was Winston-Salem's homecoming for this contest. And, you know, the Shaw Bears, surprisingly, in my opinion, with a 21-0 victory that pretty much kept Shaw in the Southern Division title race, while it pretty much eliminated Winston-Salem State. I don't think there are any scenarios that are in play for Winston-Salem State. I can't think of any. Can you?
I say according to the CIAA website, the only two teams that have a shot to win the South are going to be Shaw and Fayetteville State. What happened with Winston-Salem is it shifted the game, whereas we knew we were going to have two teams coming down in the last week of the season with an opportunity to win the Southern Division, but now instead of it being a head-to-head matchup between Winston-Salem and Fayetteville State, now we're going to have to do some scoreboard watching between Shaw and Fayetteville State to see who's going to be the ultimate champion. And Fayetteville State controls their own destiny of the two teams that we are talking about.
Right. Shaw got 2 rushing touchdowns from their freshman running back, Sidney Gibbs. One of them was actually a 72-yarder. They actually, the 72-yard run gave them a 14-0 lead. And, I saw boots on the ground at that game was our friend, Mr. Ferguson.
Chris
Ferguson. I don't know why I almost said Kevin, but I knew that wasn't right, so that's why I kind of got stuck there. And he was actually on the sideline. Now, he's a Winston-Salem alum, so I know that had to be tough for him watching that game. Gibbs finished with 133 yards on 16 carries with 2 scores. He is turning into a heck of a back for Shaw. Winston-Salem got 96 rushing yards from Pharaoh Murchison and Tayshawn Taylor finished with a game-high 14 tackles for them. I think what is interesting, as you just said, because Fayetteville State got a 32-0 win over Livingstone, who, by the way, Livingstone, man, I feel, talk about a tale of 2 halves of a season. The excitement out of being 4-0 and then since going 0-5 that's got to be that's just one of those weird things that's sort of taking place for them. But anyway, what it sets up is this Southern Division showdown, and you just mentioned it for a second, AD, and I'm going to read it here again for the people right from the CIAA site as they talk about the playoff scenarios. So, as they say, quote, the scenario is simple in the Southern Division. If Fayetteville State wins or both teams lose the final game of the week, then the Broncos advance to the championship game. If Shaw wins and Fayetteville State loses, the Shaw Bears will earn a berth in the CIAA championship due to having a better divisional win percentage. Now, Fayetteville State, of course, we know will travel to Winston-Salem, and Shaw hosts crosstown rival St. Aug's. What's interesting here is we got into an interesting discussion, AD, about the merits of the first tiebreaker being the team with the better divisional record. Let me make sure am I saying that right? Because I keep continually getting confused about this. Yeah, so due to having a better divisional win percentage, that is how Shaw will advance. So as it stands right now, Both teams are 3-1 in division. Of course, they're 3-1 in division, but Fayetteville State is 5-1 in the conference. Shaw is 4-2. And so that's why right now, if you were to go look at the standings, Fayetteville State is in first and Shaw is in second. But what would happen is Shaw wins. They would then become, 4-1. Fayetteville State would then become 3-2. And even though both of them would have had a 5-2 record in conference, if I'm not mistaken, Fayetteville beat Shaw in head-to-head too. Is that correct, AD?
I'm sorry, I lost you there for a second, Brian. Could you repeat that?
Is my signal not coming in?
No, that was actually on my end.
Okay, no, I was saying, did Fayetteville State beat Shaw head-to-head, correct?
I believe that is correct.
Well,
I'm gonna look that up right quick while you.
I got it. I got it right here. Yes, they did. They did beat them back on October 12th, 25-22. So,
yes.
Even though Fayetteville State has the head-to-head win, because the divisional record would be in favor of Shaw, they would get the bid. Now, that brings up a lot of issues, and I know you've had an issue with this. I even heard Chris Ferguson actually have some questions or thoughts about this as well. What's your take on this format or this tie-breaking rule?
First of all, in the CIAA, and sooner or later it's going to come back and bite them like it did the SIAC about 5 years ago. How can I put it? All conference schedules are not equal in the CIAA because you're taking overall conference record as your top. I guess how you determine your standings. Because of your crossover games, you play 5 games on your half and 2 games on the opposite side to determine your 7 victories or 7 wins that your record is determined by.
Right.
That's fine. That's all fine and dandy. But look at these schedules. Look at some of these teams that these teams are playing. First of all, Winston-Salem State are the 3 teams last week that went into with a mathematical chance of still doing something on the the southern portion of the conference. Winston-Salem State's crossover games, one of them was Bowie State. And then I believe they had one of the Virginia schools is also their crossover game, Brian. So
Virginia Union.
That would be Union. You know, that of the 3 teams, they by far had the 2 hardest crossover games.
Yes, they lost by 1 to Union and 10 to Bowie State.
Now, when you take a look at Fayetteville State's crossover games, they have Chowan, and we all know what happened with Chowan and all the stuff that went on with Chowan with the mid-season coaching change, and they have Lincoln, PA for their 2 games. Lincoln, PA has not won.
Let me correct. Actually, they did play Lincoln, PA, but that one didn't count. They had Elizabeth City State, and that one counted, but they beat them. So they beat Elizabeth City State 55-12, and they beat Chowan 66-20. Right.
So those who
they basically got the bottom third. They of the 3 crossover teams, AD, they got the bottom 3 teams from the north.
Yes, they by far had the easiest of the 3 teams that we are talking about. Shaw had to play Virginia State and Chowan, so you do have that one common opponent in Chowan, but playing one of those Virginia schools once again is not easy for you as your crossover game. So Isn't it kind of funny that the team with the toughest crossover schedule is the team that's left out at this point in time in the season? So it's it's a catch-22. The SIAC was the exact opposite. They did not factor the crossover games in until the second or third tiebreaker. It went by divisional record first. But I think the first tiebreaker, if you're going to take conference record, overall conference record, that's fine. But the first tiebreaker should always be head-to-head matchup, irregardless of divisional record and anything else. If I beat you on the field on any given Saturday, and you and I are tied, I should be ahead of you, no matter what.
Okay, but my argument to that is, which one of the two, conference or division, are you saying matters most? Because the way it's set up right now, they're saying conference matters
more than
conference matters, and then they go to the division tiebreak. That's the first tiebreak, and then the second tiebreak is head-to-head.
Head-to-head, correct.
Let me see. Yeah, in case of a tie between divisional teams, the winner shall be determined by a divisional win percentage, then head-to-head, then results versus common conference opponents, and then the fourth scenario is a coin toss. So they do go by conference, and you're saying you would rather what? You're saying, but if you go head-to-head, which record, conference or division, are you looking at to equate the head-to-head? Because I'll challenge you and say the conference schedules aren't even equal. They're random, but I mean, still, Shaw had a tougher. If you took all of the conference games, all of them, Shaw they played Bowie. That one didn't count, but they still played them. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I've seen it. I've seen that work or not work in the SIAC as well.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm just looking at, Brian, it to me, it doesn't matter whether you use conference as the number one or divisional record as your number one. In case of a tie, and I am talking about in case of a tie, head-to-head should matter. If I beat you on a Saturday, I should have the advantage.
I'll tell you why.
No matter if I go 3-2 in my conference or if I go 4-1, I beat you straight up.
But here's the thing about that though, head to head. That's not saying head to head is equal, because let's just say on that one particular day we go head to head. Let's just say I have somebody who's a significant player injured. Now he may miss. Okay, we can say that's football, but that's not representative of your season. He could miss one game and only one game, and you lose that one game and only that one game, and now because of some head-to-head rule, I'm potentially eliminated from the conference championship. I don't think that's a fair representative of your season, and I think that's why conferences use the conference standings, because it is a representation of your entire season, so to speak, because you can have that one blip. It sort of gives you that room for error for that one blip. That one day when you lose your key guy.
Here's the thing about that, Brian. No matter which way we order this thing up, somebody's going to be able to come along and make a solid argument that any one of these others outside of coin toss should be the number one tiebreaker, Brian. You just it's a no-win situation when you have a conference with an unbalanced schedule.
Well, but that's why I like the fact that they go to division, because they're looking at the division and say, how did you do amongst your group? I mean, if you're supposed to come out and obviously, once again, if you have to represent that division, then you need to have the best record in that division.
Right.
And
I'm gonna throw one other one out there that should be in there somewhere. If there is a common opponent, that common opponent should be factored in there before we get to the coin toss, Ryan.
they do that. That is
not common opponent is not.
It is. Yes, it is. I'm gonna read it again. It's the tiebreaker before the coin toss. Again, in the case of a tie between divisional teams, they go to divisional win percentage, then head-to-head. And I don't know. Now, see, this is crazy. I don't even know how you get to results versus common if you have head-to-head. I mean, I guess if you have a tie, maybe. I mean, because once you get to the divisional win percentage and once you get to head-to-head, isn't it pretty much over at that point?
Well, that would probably come in the way of a three-way tie, Brian. Results versus common.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay, that would. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. Any other? It'll be interesting. I'm sure there'll be a lot of debates on that. So, but how that sets up for the following weekend, and then let's move over to the North real quick. The next opponent, of course, we already talked about Winston-Salem State taking on Fayetteville State. That's at 3 p.m. And the Shaw versus St. Aug game is a 1 p.m. So now, you know what's funny is, remember last year we talked about this. Winston-Salem last year they really beat up Fayetteville State last year. I mean, they put a whooping on them to the point that I think it may have damaged them going into the championship game, because they definitely were not the same team. I mean, going into that championship game as they were prior to that Winston-Salem State game last year. But there will be some scoreboard watching. I would say pretty much by halftime, Fayetteville State will know whether Shaw won or whether Shaw lost. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see how the second half of that game plays out.
Correct, Brian. I think you're absolutely correct on that.
All right, let's jump over quickly to the north side of the CIAA, because Bowie State, with a 65-20 win over Lincoln, PA, at one point, I mean, the Bulldogs had a 28-0 lead. I think they were even up 65-6 at one point, and I think I was putting a triple-digit alert out, because I think early in the third quarter they had 65 points, and I mean, really. I mean, credit to Bowie and the coaching staff for showing some class, I guess. But if they were really hungry, they could have gone out and put a hundy on Lincoln, PA at the rate that they were going. I mean, Bowie, I wrote this down somewhere here. Let's see. Bowie State had racked up something like 6 interceptions. Yeah, they had 6 interceptions in the game. 2 of them were pick sixes by defensive back Dimitri Morcel. He had 1 of 34 yards in the first quarter. Then he came back with a 64-yard pick six in the third quarter. They got to the third-string quarterback. He got some run. So you didn't have long, big stats by Jerome Johnson in this game. And I mean, the game is what it was. Anyway, the game pretty much clinched Bowie State winning the CIAA North for the second year, for the second consecutive year. And basically all it left for Virginia State and Virginia Union was they needed to win in order to set up their big matchup next week. Virginia State beat Shawan 28-21. Virginia Union had a tough ball game against Elizabeth City State. They ended up winning 26-19. The game was tied going into the fourth quarter before Virginia Union got a score. And so now it sets up that matchup between Virginia Union and Virginia State. That's a 2 p.m. kickoff. It's at Virginia State. And AD, tell everyone what's at stake for both teams as it relates to the Division II rankings in Region 2?
Before I get to that, Brian, you brought up that 100-point barrier in that Bowie game. And if you remember when we were in the broadcast booth on Friday, I pulled up the Twitter feed. I don't remember whose Twitter feed it was, but there was a poll. How many points will Bowie score against Lincoln? And everybody in the booth laughed when I showed them that because the options were 40, 60, and 100. And
I thought it said 90. I thought there was a 90 in there somewhere.
No, it said
90. I thought it said 40, 90. I thought it said 40, 60, 40, 90, 60, and 100.
It was something ridiculous like that. And I'd be doggone if we didn't get to the 60 mark, and everybody in the broadcast booth laughed at it when I showed them that post on somebody's Twitter feed. So if you're listening to this or you know that person who sent their Twitter feed out, kudos to them for just putting something out there that ridiculous that almost came true. Now, to the playoffs. The Virginia State-Virginia Union game is going to be humongous as far as the playoff standings go. Virginia State sits currently at number 7. Virginia Union sits currently at number 9. This will be an elimination game for one of these two teams when it comes to the playoffs. Virginia State will probably remain at number 7 in the upcoming polls. Virginia Union will probably move up one spot to the number 8 spot because of the loss to by Mississippi College on this past week. Virginia State victory will probably bump them up to 6, maybe even 5 in the final poll because of some head-to-head matchups that will be going on over the next 2 weeks in the in Super Region 2. But which a 6 or a 5 ranking by Virginia State is important, and I will tell you why. You still have the SIAC not represented in the top 9. In the top 7. But a conference champion can finish as low as 9 and still qualify. And a conference champion at 9 will bump out the number 7 team. Virginia Union victory over Virginia State will probably put them in the number 7 slot in the final poll, which means they could get bumped out by an SIAC champion. So this game is important. Style points in this game will be important also for whichever one of the Virginia schools is the victor on this particular Saturday, Brian.
Would it be safe to say because of the in-region record, which right now Virginia State has a 7-1, and we're counting Saturday's games. Virginia State would have a 7-1 in-region record. Virginia Union would have a 6-2. If Virginia State is in the best shape because they only have one loss, and that one loss is to Bowie, they, obviously with one loss, would they, I'm looking at teams like Carson Newman with 2 losses. Well, you mentioned Mississippi College; they had 2 losses, so it's safe to think they would probably drop below Virginia Union. A team like West Florida, who has 1 loss as well, would there be any chance for Virginia State to move ahead of either Carson Newman or West Florida? Because I think they would need to be safely at about 5 or 6.
Yeah, well, there's a good chance. There's a good chance Virginia State will move ahead of one, if not both, of those opponents. Valdosta State plays West Florida in the final game. Excuse me, not in the final game. They play West Florida this upcoming weekend. So we know one of the 2 teams ahead of Virginia State will lose. A Valdosta State loss does not help Virginia State in their ranking because Valdosta State is not going to drop any lower than 3 with a loss. West Florida, with a loss, will drop behind Virginia State. And also, Carson Newman and Lenore Ryan play this particular weekend also, Brian. So there's another opportunity. We know somebody ahead of Virginia State is going to lose. Virginia State needs a team immediately in front of them to lose so that they can move up 1, if not 2 slots over the next 2 weeks, Brian.
All right, so that'll be interesting to see how that playoff scenarios go. So our schedule for next week, just to recap, at 1 o'clock, you have St. Aug at Shaw. 2 o'clock, you have Virginia Union at Virginia State. And then 3 o'clock, you have Fayetteville State at Winston-Salem State. Obviously, there's other games going on. Johnson C. Smith, St. Aug. Well, we mentioned St. Aug, Johnson C. Smith, and Livingstone. But essentially, those are the 3 feature games. That's your time schedule that you'll be looking in the CIAA. Just want to make mention, I think the only other score we did not mention from the CIAA over the weekend was just mentioning Johnson C. Smith with a 26-17 victory in which they had to come back from a 14-point deficit in the first half to get that win over St. Aug. So shout out and props to the Golden Bulls of Johnson C. Smith. All right, let's move over to we've got some time still in this segment, AD. I thought we'd jump over quickly over into the SIAC. And we were there for the broadcast between Tuskegee and Edward Waters. Tuskegee holds on, about the best way I could say it, holds on and gets a 27-26 win, a game in which I thought Edward Waters showed a lot. And they really, I thought, put themselves on the map. I think if their performance against Miles and Morehouse did not really impress people, then they played a 12-0 game against Kentucky State the previous week. This one was a game that probably Edward Waters could have won. I mean, I don't know if Tuskegee was sleepwalking, looking ahead for Miles next week, looking ahead for homecoming, just the oddity of everything having to play on a Friday night. But that was a game that Edward Waters nearly came back and won. Tuskegee had jumped out to a 27-13 lead in the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, before Edward Waters put together probably a great fourth quarter that resulted in 2 touchdowns, including a touchdown with 19 seconds to go to tight end Matthew Wilkerson, who essentially mossed the DB. It'll be interesting to see if that play gets some coverage on Monday Night Football via Randy Moss in his You Got Moss segment, because it definitely should get some attention. But then, as Wilkerson scores the touchdown to cut the lead, the deficit to 27-26, he makes the cardinal mistake of removing his helmet as he's running towards the sideline, and the official saw it, threw the flag, of course, and I think as that was happening, as he was coming towards the sideline, he puts his helmet back on, but too late, the damage had been done. 15-yard penalty backs him up, and I think, and talking to Coach Ruffin, he even admitted that that play essentially took away a 2-point conversion attempt, and you'll hear that a little bit later, as we had an interview with not only Coach Greg Ruffin following the game, but we had a conversation with Coach Slater as well, and we're going to play both of those for you. But AD, what's your thought on that game? Well, I guess I should finish the setup there. So the field goal, the PAT gets pushed back. The kicker misses the PAT, but he actually Tuskegee runs into him. They call it a running into the kicker, not roughing the kicker, so it's a 5-yard penalty instead of 15 yards. He gets the second attempt and misses it again. So Tuskegee ends up winning 27-26. Your thoughts?
Feel sorry for the kicker, first of all, to not once but twice miss a game-tying kick right there to potentially tie the game and force us into overtime, as there were, what was it, less than 20 seconds to go in the game at that point in time, Brian?
Exactly.
So, first of all, you have to feel sorry for him. Number two, you have to be disciplined. If you're Edward Waters, you have to be disciplined. You know, if you've played high school, rec league, or any level of ball, you know that you cannot take your helmet off on the field, especially after scoring. It is a taunting penalty. It is a personal foul. Unsportsmanlike for taunting, and the official was correct in calling that penalty. Although Edward Waters fans wish they would have swallowed their flag at that point, you have to enforce that rule. So that's what you have to do. When Edward Waters scored that touchdown, I was one of the people up in the booth yelling, "He's got to go for two." And matter of fact, I think that was the consensus in the booth.
Oh yeah, everybody thought he should be going for two.
Right, and then the different scenarios played themselves out. Talking to Coach Slater after the game, and you hear him in the interview, he was disappointed that they blew a 14-point lead in the last 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. Edward Waters is going to be a force in this conference in the near future. Keep something in mind, Brian, and you know this, but the general public may not know. Edward Waters has not had who they projected to be their starting quarterback this entire season due to some academic issues. So they're playing without the number one on the depth chart, and they're still in a position to make some noise. The defense is playing pretty good. Don't know what to say. And then Tuskegee, once again, you have got to be smarter than that. We should have never had to go to the second kick, Brian. The running into the kicker. I mean, I understand you're trying to make the play of the game, but they teach you dive 2 to 3 yards in front of the kicker, hoping to get the block. There's no way you should be at the point where you are landing anywhere near the kicker and or the holder, because the penalty would be the same if you hit the kicker or the holder. So mistakes all the way around in those last 30 seconds of that game, Brian. Yes, it was drama-filled. Yes, it was a hell of an ending to the game. But let's be real, Brian. It should have never happened that way.
You're right. Definitely, it should not have. Let's give a shout out to just Tuskegee in general, because they were at one point 1-4, had lost 3 games in a row, and then all of a sudden they have now put together 4 consecutive wins. Coming into this game against Edward Waters, the 3 previous games, they had only given up 10 points to each of those opponents. So defensively, they had figured something out. I mean, when Edward Waters actually scored their 13th point in the early part of the third quarter, I basically felt like they had broken through a ceiling. Now, granted, Tuskegee came back and put up 2 scores right after that, so it was like, oh, what kind of, they quickly, whatever ceiling they broke through, they just lifted it again. But then Edward Waters, Edward Waters came right back and put up a couple of more scores in that fourth quarter. So, in general, what a season that Tuskegee has had to be able to go from where they started in the first half to now they sit 1 game away. And it's very similar to where they were a year ago. A year ago, They were one
Except
game away.
Go ahead.
No, well, let me finish here. They were in a similar situation last year, going up to Wilberforce to take on Central State, and Central State beat them. And by beating them, they set up the matchup with Miles. I believe that game was at Miles, and it was a game that Tuskegee led at one point, but they ended up giving it up, and Miles ended up winning that game, coming back in the fourth quarter to win that ball game. And Miles goes on to the championship game, wins the championship. Tuskegee's left looking at, it's like that emoji where they just got two hands up, looking up, and you're just like, what just happened? So granted, the week before Miles, here you are on the road playing Edward Waters, and you almost had a similar scenario where if you would have lost this game, you just blew. Well, it would have put a damper on what's to come, which is now homecoming this upcoming week, this upcoming Saturday, hosting Miles, a payback game, and the winner gets to win the SIAC West. What an opportunity for Tuskegee.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is you mentioned that glass ceiling with Tuskegee, Bryan, and I brought out the interesting stat of the day, and I call them the useless fact of the day, Bryan. This season, Tuskegee in day games is 3-1. This season, in night games, coming into the Edward Waters game, Tuskegee was 1-3, and they've not been able to perform after 4 o'clock. That part of that may be due to the fact that Tuskegee has no lights at Cleve Abbott Memorial Stadium, so your routine is off just a little bit when you have to play in the afternoon, late afternoon and early evening versus a 1 o'clock start. So there were different factors that may go into that for Tuskegee. But you talk about last year, Bryan, you're absolutely right. This is similar to last year, except for one thing that you need to remember, Bryan. It looks like the script is flipped just a little bit. Last year, Tuskegee was the team that was doing good and let Miles come in the door. This year, Tuskegee got off to the bad start and figured it out halfway through the season, just like Miles did last year. And Miles has lost to Central State, has let Tuskegee back in the door.
Whoa, that is some next level analysis you just dropped on me right there, AD. I was, wow, that you're right. You are so right, man. So I guess, man, wow. I've got to run now. I got to play that back again, AD. If you didn't, just rewind the podcast that you're listening to, and because AD just dropped some knowledge that's pretty cool. I think I'm gonna have to splice that up and rerun that a couple of times over, AD, because that was tough.
Yeah, because don't ask me to say it again, because I don't know what I just said.
Well, look, you said it perfectly, and sometimes the best stuff comes unscripted.
Right, but it is very ironic. It is similar when you go back and look at the stories. The loss to Central State by the team that had control of the conference, let the team that's trailing in the conference bring meaning into that last game that should not have been there.
Yeah, I'm just making a little note because I want to go back and splice that up. We're going to definitely pub and promote that. That was a great take there, AD. Great take. Real quick, I'm going to give a moment here so that we can insert some post-game interviews that we did with Coach Greg Ruffin of EWC. And also, you'll hear from Coach Willie Slater, and you'll hear from both of those two gentlemen, those coaches, following the game on Friday night. And so I'm going to pause for just a moment so that you can hear those post-game comments.
This is Brian Fulford with the Black College Sports Network here with Coach Greg Ruffin after a tough loss against Tuskegee, 27-26, a final score. Coach, this is a game that was right here. It was right there, an opportunity for the team to get this win. Tough circumstances there at the end. Describe a little bit your thoughts and emotions after this game.
I mean, my kids fault. It's unfortunate. We made that undisciplined error when he took his helmet off, and it kind of cost us 15-yard penalty because we were gonna go for two. We had a 2-point play drawn up, and I felt very good about it. And the 15-yard celebration penalty took us out of that situation and put us in a position to have to go, kick a field goal. Then we get a blessing there. They're outside. We get a 5-yard penalty, and then we just come back and we with the ability to better take the game into overtime, and it's just wide left. It just things didn't bounce our way at the end. But I was just proud of the way the guys compete, guys. Yeah, I was proud of the way the guys competed, and I just think it's an eye opener, but it's also a teachable moment. You know what I'm saying? And I'll tell people, if there's anybody got an idea as to whether or not we're going to be able to compete in this league, I think we've shown them in most of our league games. We got a young ball club, and we continue to fight, and, they're very resilient. But, we've had some situations where Edward Waters has had a hand in beating Edward Waters, and just like what happened here at the end. But, hey, to come back down 14 points and to punch it in the way we get the key stop, punch it in, hey, what can I say? I was proud of everybody in the room, and, we just got to get ready, put it behind us, and get ready to play Savannah State next week.
Yeah, you kind of answered a little bit. I mean, you had two different moments there in the first half where you're in a 6-6 ball game, and you had that right there at that touchdown that they scored at the end of the first half. What was that message going into halftime? Because I felt like that first half was a pretty even first half, with the exception of that one play at the end. What was that message at halftime?
Well, we blew a coverage there. We had two people on two different on sheets of music, you know what I mean? And it was a situation where one guy's playing cover 2, the other guy's playing cover 4, and he gets up the sideline. And it was 3rd and 7, and so we were in a situation where they were just trying to keep it, we were trying to keep everything in front of them. And believe it or not, I want to think that Slater he was trying to get 3 points and get the heck out of there, you know what I mean? And we just can't get that up. But even coming out of halftime, we score, they score, we score. You know what I'm saying? And I'm looking at the stats here. We got 337 yards. They had 322. You know what I'm saying? We were 6 of 15 on 3rd down. You know what I'm saying? And we were 3 of 3 in the red zone. So, it's just one of those things. We just got to continue to fight. And I tell you, the best is yet to come over here in Jacksonville. But we got to get these guys ready, mentally prepared to play a good, tough Savannah State ball game. And like I said earlier, it's rivalry week. I don't think they look at us much of it as a rivalry. They ain't played in a while, and with them moving down from Division 1 to Division 2, and we still being NAIA, he's going to have his guys prepared and ready to play. But I can assure you that they don't look at us as a team that's going to be their rival every year, because, that last weekend, you got Clark and Morehouse, you got Albany, Fort Valley, you got Kentucky State, Central State, you know what I'm saying? You got us in Savannah. Shit, we're out 15 minutes from each other. So, we're going to sell out. We ain't got nothing to lose. We're going to sell out, and our guys going to come back with the same effort. They're going to play a tough football game, and we'll see if we can get one in the win column next week.
At the end of that game, you scored a touchdown. It's cut to 1. We upstairs were thinking, okay, without the unsportsmanlike penalty there for the celebration, what would have been the play? Do you go for 2? Would you have gone for the 1? What would you have
we were
done?
going to win the ball game. We were going to win the ball game. There was no question in my mind. We were going to win the ball game. We had a play drawn up, and I felt real good about it, and that's what we were going to do. So, unfortunately, it didn't get to that, but that was my thinking process in it, that we were going to go for 2 to get the win.
After the first missed PAT, there was another penalty. Did you sent the field goal unit or the
yeah, but see, here's the deal. They called running into the kicker. Had it been a 15-yard penalty, I would have came back and ran a 2-point play, because I would have gotten the yardage back that I needed to really get what I wanted off. But unfortunately, it didn't happen like that. So it is what it is, and we'll get ready to roll next week.
I know you haven't gone over the film, but as you're just thinking back, any particular players or maybe groups, I personally thought, your quarterback probably played maybe his best game of the year. Your offensive line did a good job. Defensively, the front four did great. Anybody or any groups that kind of stand out in your mind as you're thinking about it right now?
I just look at the way we control the line of scrimmage, I thought, most of the night. And, what I'm saying, we did a good job. Our offensive line did a good job of us ripping our runs, 4 yards here, 5 yards here, 3 yards there. Hugely almost had 100 yards again. You know what I'm saying? So, we played offensively collectively. It was probably one of our better games. About like we played against Allen, and tougher opponent, but nevertheless, the guys rose to the occasion. Like I tell people, you know what I'm saying? They got 36 scholarships over there. We're working towards whatever, what we're going to do as we move toward the future. Our administration is on board, with our leadership with Dr. A. Zachary Faison. We want to get this thing built the right way, and I think, everybody knows they can see where we are in terms of, how we have tested our mettle against the other conference foes. We're going to be fine over here in Jacksonville.
As you get ready to go into this weekend and then Savannah State week, are you going to spend a little time tomorrow watching them play as you get ready to go into Savannah State week?
Well, I'm gonna relax. It was my birthday today, so I almost got a heck of a present. Yeah, almost. But we're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. We'll watch some football. I can sit back and just relax a little bit, and then
at least for a day.
We'll get back at it Sunday.
All right, Coach, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you,
buddy.
And good luck.
All right,
we look forward to being back here next week for Savannah State.
All right, let's get it.
All right,
baby.
AD Drew here with the Black College Sports Network, and I'm here with Coach Willie Slater of the Tuskegee Golden Tigers, who just pulled off a dramatic 28-27 victory over the Edward Waters Tigers here in Jacksonville, Florida. Coach, first of all, tell us about the dramatic play at the end and the decision to take the penalty on the PAT instead of on the ensuing kickoff.
Yeah. If I hadn't taken it, they were going to go for two, so we had to take it. And then, unfortunately for them, they missed the kick 2 times in a row. Yeah. They missed it the first time, and they called us for running into the kicker, and then they kicked it again, and they missed it the second time.
So what's going through your mind? Running into the kicker, you're losing 5 yards closer. So now,
the thing that's going through my mind is how do you lose a 14-point lead late in the fourth quarter? And that's exactly what we did. We lost a 14-point lead with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and you just can't do that. We started taking players out, just let them drive the ball down the field and score. And then offensively, we didn't get a first down to keep them from getting the ball right there at the end. And all of that was bad decision making.
Now going back to the first half, you had a couple of drives that got stopped short in the red zone, but you were able to come back in the second half and open it up. What type of adjustments did you make in the halftime?
Well, those same guys that was open the first half was open the second half, but we just didn't make the throws or we didn't make the catches. That was the difference.
All right. Next week, homecoming. You got Miles coming in. That will be for the Western Division title. Just quickly, just give first thoughts about playing Miles next weekend.
Well, it'll be a tough game for us. Miles is a very good football team. They coming off of a tough loss up in Central State, and then they got to play Kentucky State tomorrow. So they'll be a tough team to play next week.
All right. Next week. Well, Coach, thanks for giving me a couple of minutes. Good luck next week in the potential Western Division Championship, Coach.
All right.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loot machine.
I've been waiting for days to come like this, better than ever before.
been through, we have a warm welcome waiting for you at more than 325 hotels around the world. Book today at DoubleTree.com. DoubleTree by Hilton, where the little things mean everything.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
It didn't. What happened was a gentleman wanted to do the Black College Sports Network in partnership with the HBCU for these black colleges.
Absolutely.
And it would have educated the Black College Sports Network. This is what he wanted to do. That would have educated a lot of black kids. Okay. That was the real reason why I got into it, was when I saw what happened with the Black College Sports Network, which I
Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
Okay, AD, so having heard right there from both coaches, we get ready to move forward into the rest of the games from the SIAC that were played on Saturday. And, of course, one of our primary feature games was Fayetteville State at Savannah State. And, you know, this is the crazy thing about what we do. And maybe this is just
Fort Valley State, Brian.
What? I'm sorry, what did I say?
Fayetteville.
Thank you. Fort Valley State at Savannah State. It was the main matchup that we're talking about for the SIAC. Is actually one of the primary games that we were focused in on. And what I was going to say is, Fort Valley State, we did not know going into this game that they were without Slade Jarman, their quarterback. He has accounted for so much of that team, not only from the quarterback position passing, but also rushing the ball as well. He apparently had an injury in the previous week's game against Clark, a lower leg injury, and pretty much his season was over, which sucks for a young man who had his season come to an end last year after the third game of the year. And actually he had a pretty good start to the season last year for them, for the Wildcats. And then, of course, their season, you know, was not the kind of season that many people had seen after two previous years. I mean, the two previous years they played in the SIAC championship game, winning one of those 2 years. So, of course, they have the injury to Jarman last year. Well, this year, I mean, after losing to Miles to open the season and Florida A&M, we've already talked about that schedule, and then they went on a 6-game winning streak coming into this game against Savannah State. And then, of course, we know the story of Savannah State. I mean, this might be the best story of the black college football season. There's some, you know, it's one of those things we'll have to talk about here in December and see how the rest of the season plays out, AD. But Savannah State was basically looking to not only win the Georgia State Championship, the unofficial Georgia State Championship, right, with wins over, who are all the teams in Georgia that they've beaten? Morehouse,
Clark,
Morehouse,
Albany State,
yep,
and now Fort Valley.
And now Fort Valley, because they put a 53-24 whooping on Fort Valley State. They got out to a 28-0 lead in the first quarter. Fort Valley started, I believe they fumbled on the second play of the game. from scrimmage and then turned right around, and there's Savannah State to score. But, Savannah State just offensively, we're just having their way with Fort Valley. They had two rushers, two players run for over 145 yards each. You had the quarterback, Devon Gibbons. He ran 17 times for 145 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 67-yard touchdown run. Then you had D'Angelo Durham, he had a big week last week against Albany State. He had 21 carries, 148 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And his long was 67 as well. I may have written that. Yeah, his long was 67. But and then going back to Gibbs for a second, he was 5 of 8 passing. 4 of those 5 completions were touchdown passes. I mean, we know Savannah State does not throw the ball a lot, but 4 touchdown passes and 5 completions is pretty doggone good. And so now Savannah State pretty much is the only unbeaten team in the SIAC East, the unofficial or mythical. I don't know if it's right to call it mythical, but they are the only unbeaten, untied team from the SIAC East. What are your thoughts just on what Savannah State has done this season and what that win means going forward? Just in general, your thoughts.
Go down to your local Office Depot or Staples and get a certificate, because Savannah State are the paper champions in the SIAC this year, just based upon their records. SIAC, be on alert. The Savannah State team, especially with that unconventional offense that they run, is going to be here and going to be a player in this conference for a long while, it looks like, at least in the near future up under Coach Sean Quinn. That pistol offense that they run with the triple option out of the pistol, and I saw so many holes up the middle in this particular game, Brian. You could drive a 18-wheeler through. As you just can't. It seems like teams are not able to get prepared for this offense in a week's time. You're gonna have to hope that you're going to play Savannah off of a bye when you're going to play them, and then hope that you have the athletes on your scout team to give you the looks that you're going to need to try to slow down the Savannah offense.
Now, the other thing that I have to admit here, AD, there was maybe I was the one who was confused, or maybe we were the one who were confused. I was under the impression a couple of weeks ago that they could play for the SIAC championship game, even though we found out that they could not be in the Division II playoffs. It didn't sound right, because obviously the MEAC has a rule which is affecting Florida A&M, which if you're not eligible for the playoffs, you can't be eligible to win the conference. And so it was sort of the thought that I've had for the last couple of weeks that, how bad does it look for the SIAC if you have a team that can't even go to the playoffs, win your conference? Because I really believe if Savannah State were given an opportunity to play in the championship game, even against Miles, I think they might come very close to winning that game. I think Miles is the only team who might be able to beat them, because I think Miles can match them offensively. But yeah, I after seeing what they did to Albany State and then what they did to Fort Valley, yeah, I'm pretty convinced that Savannah State probably, I would have put them at about a 70% likelihood of winning the championship against whoever you put over there, whether it be Miles or Tuskegee. But all that said, I was wrong. We were wrong. They are not competing. So what that means is Albany State versus Fort Valley State now. is the actual game that will determine who comes out of the East. Both of those teams have lost to Savannah State, so that's why they have one division, one conference loss. Albany State ended up winning this past weekend, 21-15, I believe, was the score over Morehouse. And, of course, Fort Valley State, we understand what happened with them in the loss to Savannah State. But really, Albany State is in the driver's seat in the best position because, one, they're going up against a Fort Valley team that doesn't have their main guy in Slade Jarman. And so, the Fort Valley coaches are going to have to do a great job of getting their guys prepared for this game after the Savannah State game. And I'm sure that had to be an emotional loss. And now, this is a big rivalry game in Georgia. You understand that, AD. This right there in your neck of the woods where you are, in Albany and Fort Valley here, and Albany's still in play. They win this game. If they can find a way to get to the championship game and win the championship, they very well could end up in the playoffs again. So that's sort of the scenario for the East. Any thoughts on the scenario and scenarios for the East as it relates to Division II playoffs?
Albany State is sitting at number 10. They will probably bump up to number 9. And Albany State win will put them in the playoffs. The question is, if Fort Valley upsets Albany State, and we know Fort Valley is a totally different team without Slade Jarman at quarterback. So that would be an upset without Slade Jarman. Is that going to be enough, along with that SIAC championship over Miles or Tuskegee? Is that going to be enough to get Fort Valley in, or will the SIAC be shut out for the second consecutive year out of the playoffs? Flipping over, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I think you were about to go where I was wanting to go. Go ahead.
I'm going to flip it over to the west side.
Exactly. Right.
Obviously, a Tuskegee victory over Miles. A Tuskegee Fort Valley championship game pretty much is going to lock out the SIAC. You can almost guarantee it because of the strength of schedules of both those teams. Tuskegee did have a decent strength of schedule, but Tuskegee was unable to win those regional games that they needed to win. A Miles Albany State matchup is going to be the best scenario for the SIAC as far as guaranteeing a team in the Division II playoffs. Obviously, a victory by Albany State over Miles, with Albany State sitting at number 9, will get them in. It is going to be tough for Miles to get in. I'm not going to say impossible, but it will be tough for Miles to get to that number 9 slot that they need to get to, because a victory over Tuskegee is not going to be not going to do a whole lot to help their rating, because Tuskegee's RPI this particular year and their record is low. They're a 500 team this year, Brian. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they lose to Miles, they will be exactly a 500 team. So, is there
a game? Obviously Miles, that's got to be that's a depressing thought. If I'm a Miles a fan or alum, we're having a great season, and now you're telling me that if we beat Tuskegee and go into 8-2, go to the championship game, is there any? First off, I guess my question is, which loss hurt them more? Was it losing earlier in the year to Missouri S&T, or was it losing to Central State? And then, is there any value out of winning the championship, say, over an Albany State, that would somehow jump Miles into the rankings where, as the SIC champion, at that point they would be 9-2, could get them into the playoffs?
The victory, the loss to Missouri S&T is a non-factor because although Missouri S&T is a Division II team, they are not a Division II regional team, and the rankings are based upon your region. A victory over a team such as UNC Pembroke or another team out of the Gulf South or the SAC, that's the South Atlantic Conference, would have done Miles much more and made them a much better position than playing the Missouri S&T game. That's number one. Number two, because of Albany State's current rank, Albany State is only will at best be number 9, Brian. Because you're beating one of the bottom feeders in the super region. I honestly do not think it's going to be enough. You know, if Miles was beating a team such as a Bowie State or Valdosta State, who's ranked up there in the top 3, yes, that victory would impress the voters. But over a team that's barely in right now, and you're not close yet because of your poor strength of scheduling, your poor RPI, and see, that's what you have to keep in mind. Miles' RPI is under 400. Miles is the only team who's sniffing the playoffs with the RPI under 400, Brian. So you have one of the softest schedules of the teams trying to get in the playoffs. Not going to be enough.
Wow. That's a bit of a gut punch, I got to think.
I could be wrong.
Anything can happen.
Rankings come out, Brian.
Yeah.
I hope I am.
Yeah, exactly. Anything can happen. I mean, you know, we're just giving our analysis and our thought. Obviously, we're not the NCAA. We're not voting, so anything can take place. I was on the computer here. I had my page pulled up, and then all of a sudden I lost it here. Miles ended up with a 12, I believe it was 17-0 victory over Kentucky State on their senior night for them. Also of note from the conference, Lane with a 36-10 win over Central State. Benedict gets their first win of the year over Clark Atlanta. You know, something had to give, 2 winless teams, and it looks like Benedict is the one that took advantage, as they took advantage of Clark, 31-7. And so the schedule, real quick, for next Saturday, as it plays out, it'll be Miles at Tuskegee. It is Tuskegee's homecoming. So that game will be broadcast on Flow Sports. I don't have the exact time of that game.
Which one is that? It's 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock Central.
Okay, so that's a 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern time game. And then the other game of note, and that game, the winner will win the SIAC West Division. Then you have Albany State traveling to Fort Valley State. That game will be broadcast on ESPN3, and that time tip-off, AD, is?
That, I believe, is a 2 o'clock Eastern time.
Yep. So both games pretty much will kick off at the same time. And that is the Fountain City Classic, the Albany State-Fort Valley State game. That game is played in Columbus. Correction to what I said earlier.
Yes, it is in Columbus.
Yeah, so both games kick off at 2 p.m., and so that's what we can look forward to in that game. We will be broadcasting the Savannah State Edward Waters game, which I believe is at 3 p.m. kickoff. So we will be back in Jacksonville for the season finale for both Savannah State and Edward Waters. All right, AD, lots covered there in the first. You got something else to add? My bad.
I was going to say before we get off of Division II, one other team with playoff implications that we need to mention is going to be West Virginia State, who lost to Charleston.
University of Charleston. They lost that game 49-24.
42-24.
49-24.
Oh, they've got 42-24 on the Mountain East website. So one of our websites is right.
I watched it. It was 49, and Charleston scored every bit of 49. And the way West Virginia State's defense was playing, I mean, Charleston could have probably put up 60 on them. That's how bad that game was for West Virginia State.
Yes, that was the NCAA Division II showcase game of the week. Austin Henley had a decent game, had a couple of touchdown passes in that particular game, but it was just not quite enough.
Yeah, Hensley had 4 interceptions. I think he threw for 380-something yards. But more significantly, somewhere in the third quarter, he suffered an injury to his shoulder, and it pretty much affected him a little bit. I mean, he came back after a couple of possessions, but there were a couple of interceptions that may have been due to some maybe discomfort of his shoulder. At least that's what, as I was watching it, that was sort of the impression that the announcers even had. But just in general, I mean, they couldn't stop Charleston, and then when you can't stop the other team, you definitely can't keep giving them opportunities. I mean, you know, there were moments when West Virginia's offense did what it did. I mean, at one point in the fourth quarter, let's see. I was looking at it here because I was, again, at one point early in the fourth quarter, West Virginia, who were trailing 35-10 going into the fourth quarter, had scored twice within the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, and had cut the lead to 35-24. And so you're thinking, here they come again. Austin Hensley had threw 2 touchdown passes, you know, in that fourth quarter. And what do you know? Sure enough, on the ensuing, after the score, the ensuing drive, all Charleston did was go 5 plays, 75 yards down the field in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, punched it in 42-24, and that's when I knew, that game's over.
Yeah.
That drive right there, it was over.
Yeah, and Brian, this is only the second time this year that this West Virginia State team has, the third time this year that this team has been in a game that has been decided by more than a touchdown.
Yeah, they actually.
No, second time. Excuse me. This is the second game that's been decided by more than a touchdown, and they have won all but one of those games, Brian.
Yeah. Well, what's facing them now, obviously, you got to get a win this upcoming week. They play Wheeling Jesuit University. And then they have the big showdown against Notre Dame College, Ohio.
Which is going to be a must-win for them. West Virginia State was sitting at number 5. They'll probably they'll definitely drop to the bottom half of the top 10, probably somewhere around 8, just taking an educated guess at it. They've got to get to 7, Brian. And a victory over Notre Dame College in the final week of the season definitely will put them in the top 7. They can't afford another loss. It's just as simple. Another loss, even to a good Notre Dame team, is probably going to eliminate them. But if they would have won against Charleston and then lost to a Notre Dame, they would have still gotten in, Brian.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it might have put Charleston in the runner's seat because I believe. Well, actually, no. It's only the second loss for West Virginia State in the conference. They're still one game up on Charleston.
Right. But they're sitting in third. Ironically, they're sitting in third place in the conference, but they are rated higher than the number 2 team, which is Frostburg.
Well, but I think they beat Frostburg, didn't they? I think they beat Frostburg.
No, Frostburg beat them.
Okay.
Yeah, Frostburg beat them. And one last thing before we get out of here on Division II, Brian, my votes for this upcoming week at number 5.
Oh, we're doing this now. We're doing this. We're doing okay. Thanks for that. Thanks for the heads up there.
Oh, well, if we're going to finish off Division II, let's go ahead and put it out there.
I hadn't had a chance to think about it, but okay, go ahead. I'll let you do yours, and let me see if I can quickly scribble mine down. Go ahead.
All right. My number 5 is going to be Virginia State, based on their strength of schedule. Number 4 is going to be the Langston Lions. And number 3 is going to be Savannah State. My number 2 team is going to be Miles. And my number 1 team is going to be the Bowie Bulldogs.
Okay.
Those are my votes for this week that I will be submitting to the pollsters.
Okay, my votes that I'll be submitting, I'll go Langston still at 5, Virginia State at 4, Savannah State at 3, Miles at 2, and Bowie at 1.
Yeah, same 5, different order.
Did we? I'm curious, and I think we were both for lack of a better word, I think we were a prisoner of the moment as it related to Fort Valley State. For Fort Valley State to not be in the poll and then kind of show up in the poll at number 2, were we a prisoner of the moment? Were we late in recognizing Fort Valley State, or is it just one of those things based on the fact that, look, an injury as significant as what they had? I put it like this. Would you have still voted for Fort Valley State at number 2 last week, or 2 or 3, whichever one you voted them in last week, had you known Slade Jarman was injured and wouldn't play in the Savannah State game?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Probably not me neither.
Because, like I just said earlier, they're a totally different team without Jarman at quarterback.
Okay. All right, let's take a break, AD. Let's pause. I know our producer, Roy, is somehow going to try to find a way to drop a break in this. So if you've heard and you stuck through this first hour of the show and you didn't hear a break, well, you're going to hear some breaks now. And so maybe you heard some earlier, maybe you didn't. Either way, we appreciate you hanging in there. When we come back, we're going to talk about the MEAC and the SWAC, the division FCS division schools, and then give you our players of the week. You're listening to the Week 10 wrap-up show, the BCSN Sports Wrap. Bryan and AD here. We'll be back right after these words.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
The Creole seasoning is a sodium-free and sugar-free blend that's versatile enough to put on anything. One of the first blends I developed more than 8 years ago, the Creole seasoning has an unmistakable aroma, a bold flavor, and a little heat for character. Every time I open one of these bottles, I hear trumpets and big band music.
The Black College Sports Network is proud to partner with ComputerRatings.com. That's ComputerRatings.com. Ratings.com for the upcoming college football season. ComputerRatings.com delivers rankings, game predictions, and statistics for hundreds of professional and collegiate teams. The key feature of ComputerRatings.com is the Versus Sports Simulator, which allows users to simulate any possible matchup and view the predicted scores along with a side-by-side stats analysis. Improve your odds by signing up for a subscription. Monthly, semi-yearly, and yearly subscriptions are available. For our listeners and viewers, use the promo code BCSN19 and get 15% off of your subscription at checkout. Visit www.computerratings.com. That's COMPUGHTER ratings.com.
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
It's like a loop machine. Going around town, people trying to get down.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap, our Week 10 review. Brian Fulford and AD Drew here. Interact with us. Find us personally on Twitter. You can find AD. Tell them exactly where they can find you so I don't mess it up this time.
BCSN DREW.
And you can find me at DRB365. And, of course, we are on the Black College Sports Network at MyBCSN, the number 1. All right, so moving over to the MEAC, our game, pretty much what we tabbed as our featured game of the weekend, our BCSN versus game of the week. North Carolina A&T traveling to South Carolina State in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Both teams with a one conference loss coming to Florida A&M. Both teams losing to the Rattlers. And, you know, this is a game, AD. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the phlegm out of my voice here. It's always great for a podcast. This is a game that was really, it had its flows. It wasn't a back and forth game. It really was framed in, I'd say, 3 different segments. The first, I'd say the first quarter and a half was South Carolina State. South Carolina State got out to a 10-0 lead in this ball game. Definitely were helped due to a turnover early by North Carolina A&T, but they essentially had a 10-0 lead, and then inexplicably backed up in his own 1 or 2 yard line. Quarterback Tyrese Nick made what I thought was one of the most unusual decisions as he dropped back to pass. He sort of pump faked, and then for whatever reason he brought the ball down and started rolling to his left. Now, he's not a lefty, but he's rolling left. I think he could have thrown this ball away, and I'm watching it in the slow motion. You're thinking, throw it. He doesn't throw the ball. He holds on to the ball, gets tackled in the end zone. He ends up losing the ball. It gets recovered by A&T. So you got either a safety if his knee is down, or you've got a touchdown for A&T thanks to their defense. It ended up being a safety. So now the score went from 10-0 to now 10-2. What did A&T do on that ensuing drive after the kickoff? Oh, they just marched down the field and punched it in for a touchdown. And then Coach Washington makes the curious decision. Instead of going for 2, he goes for 1. Okay, no problem. Scores 10-9.
Still don't understand that decision, Brian, even though it turned out in favor of them in the long run. Being down 2 or being down 1 at that point in time in the game really does not matter. Go for 2, tie the game up.
Right. It didn't matter. At that point of the safety, I believe it was the 7-minute mark. 2 minutes left in the 7 minutes left in the second quarter. That's where the safety happened. And then, of course, they close a touchdown with Jermaine Martin, who pretty much had been bottled up. I think overall, South Carolina State had bottled up Martin. I think he only had something like 67 total yards in the game. But they bottled him up. He did get a 5-yard touchdown run. So now the score is 10-9 with 1:44 left. And then, of course, A&T would get one more opportunity after South Carolina State gave the ball back to him. And then they drove right back down the field again. Khalil Carter, 4 yards to Corey Banks on a beautiful pass. I mean, it was like a little slant route. And now it's 16-10 at the half. And you're just sitting there thinking, what in the world just happened? I mean, you talk about getting blitzed. With 7 minutes to go, you're up 10. Now at halftime, you're down 6. And the A&T would go on and score 2 more field goals in the third quarter, and they were up. Before you knew it, they were up 22-10. And I'm just sitting there thinking, there's no way South Carolina. I mean, obviously, there's no confidence, I think, that they had in Tyrese Nick. They ended up making the switch again, very similar to what they did against Florida A&M. They went to Corey Fields, who's a freshman, and he actually, he passed for 284 yards, even managed to lead them on a score with a touchdown, which cut it to 22-17. And then South Carolina State would get another field goal to make it 22-20. But they never could get over the hump after that. It was like South Carolina State had sort of buried themselves after that safety, and it's amazing how one play and the momentum swing can just I'll tell you this, AD, it's very similar to what happened to Florida A&M when they played South Carolina State. Ryan Stanley's interception in the end zone in the early part of the fourth quarter is what spurred on South Carolina State coming back and scoring a couple of times. Of course, one of those was thanks to a blocked punt, but it was just a momentum swing. It was a 14-point swing that occurred for Florida A&M, and they were lucky enough to get back into the ball game thanks to a mental mistake with a celebration penalty by South Carolina State. But this time, North Carolina A&T didn't make such mistakes, and they didn't let South Carolina State back in the ball game after they took that lead. And so, final score 22-20 for North Carolina A&T, and the Aggies are now 6-2 overall, 4-1 in the MEAC. South Carolina State drops to 3-2. In the MEAC. Well, they've got 2 losses, so I think they're 5-3 with they've got 2 losses in the MEAC. And of course, Bethune-Cookman, who was on a bye week, they too are now 4-1, sitting with 1 loss in the conference. And so the next scenario, the next domino to fall, AD, it looks like it's going to be when Bethune and South Carolina State plays. Bethune and North Carolina A&T play. And so when you think about the scenarios, what runs through your mind? And just, of course, share your thoughts on that game and just the playoff scenarios that come from it.
I'm going to be honest with you, Brian. There are too many playoff scenarios to go over right now. We're going to have to let the MEAC play out for another week before we can really try to put some clarity on this. But there are scenarios where we could have 3-way ties, and a 3-way tie would benefit teams such as South Carolina State and a team that is still mathematically in the mix, North Carolina Central, could play themselves back into the mix by forcing a 3-way tie. But right now we've got 4 teams vying for that top spot to represent the MEAC in the Celebration Bowl due to the FAMU sanctions. Those 4 teams being A&T, Bethune, South Carolina State, and Central.
Right. So as it stands, teams with 1 loss, A&T and Bethune. Teams with 2 loss, South Carolina State and North Carolina Central. Of course, FAMU sitting unbeaten, having beaten they've beaten all 4 of those teams, if I'm not mistaken. No, except for Bethune. Obviously, they played Bethune end of the year. Okay, so not this week. Next weekend, you've got Bethune taking on North Carolina A&T, and that game will be in Greensboro. Okay? You've also got South Carolina State traveling to North Carolina Central. Okay? The only thing I can say for all certainty right now is that if Bethune beats North Carolina A&T next week, they are pretty much assured the Celebration Bowl bid because they would be the last remaining team with 1 loss. And I say pretty much. Well, no, I take that back. I guess I should rephrase it. They have the highest percentage. They are the front runners, right? They're the front runners. They would be the only team that controls their own destiny.
Correct.
Is that the best way of saying it?
That is correct because a Bethune loss to FAMU in the Florida Classic would open it up to the winner of the South Carolina State North Carolina Central game the following week.
Right. Now, here's the other side. Let's say, okay, so that's what happens if South Carolina State wins.
Actually, Bethune beat both of those teams, correct, Brian? No, Bethune lost to South Carolina State.
Yes, they lost to South Carolina State. Yeah, I said
right.
Nope.
So, So, like I say, too many to go over, Brian.
Too many to go over. I was just going to keep it simple. I was trying to keep it simple, but I don't even think that's possible. But I'm going to try. If A&T wins, they have 1 loss. Bethune would have 2. Now, what's interesting is here's where the South Carolina State North Carolina Central game comes into play. Those 2 teams would have 2 losses. If North Carolina Central were to win that game, it would then mean that they have a chance of creating real chaos if they were able to beat North Carolina A&T in that rivalry game, in that Aggie-Eagle Classic. Okay? Real chaos could ensue. If South Carolina State were to win, it would eliminate North Carolina Central, and pretty much it would do in South Carolina State because there's no way they would have the tiebreaker over A&T. So if I do the math right here, if North Carolina A&T, okay, here, I got it. Follow me here. Watch me. A&T beats Bethune-Cookman, and South Carolina State beats North Carolina Central. North Carolina A&T goes into the last weekend as the MEAC representative in the Celebration Bowl. Does that make sense? Any scenario that you can envision.
What happens if Central loses? If Central defeats A&T?
But remember. The week before, they would own the tiebreaker. Remember, they would own the 2 of the teams that would then have 2 losses, which would be Bethune and South Carolina State. They would own the tiebreaker over both of those teams, head-to-head. That's why I said if South Carolina State beats North Carolina Central and A&T beats Bethune, that pretty much wraps it up, and North Carolina A&T is your MEAC represent going to the Celebration Bowl.
Brian, you're giving me a headache trying to figure all this out.
I'm pretty sure I'm right, but anyway, I'll let somebody who's listening and maybe understood or halfway understood what we were trying to do there. You hit me up on Twitter at DRB365 and let me know if I'm right or whether I'm wrong in that breakdown. Just real quick, make mention of a couple other games. As I said, North Carolina Central did beat Howard 28-6. The North Carolina Central, North Carolina Central, and this is 1 week away. This is 1 week ago when they had to win on a last-second a kick return over Morgan State. So this week, Central, I was trying to just quickly scan through here. Other than they posted 199 rushing yards. The Bison are just not having a great season. The one spotlight for Howard, Kyle Anthony, the senior wide receiver for Howard, became their all-time reception leader. I believe he now set the mark with 185 receptions. So he is the all-time leading receptions leader at Howard University with 185 total. So that was them. Norfolk State shut out Morgan 48-0. That again, Norfolk State putting up great numbers. They got 5 interceptions, the defense did, and then the offense put up 529 yards. Jawan Carter, 314 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Raekwon Smith rushed for 142 yards. Norfolk State, 3-6, 2-3 in the conference. Their next contest, of course, is North Carolina Central this upcoming weekend, and that's a very important game. That's an opportunity. North Carolina Central is not going to get an easy game because Norfolk State has really played. They have played well. If they don't turn the ball over, then Norfolk State is going to be some trouble for Central, and it'll be interesting to see Norfolk State's offense led by Jawan Carter going up against that Central defense, especially their secondary. And then in Tallahassee, Florida A&M gets a huge victory over Delaware State, 52-30. I believe the line was 26.5, so the Rattlers did not quite cover it. Although at one point at the half, the score was 31-3. At halftime, Florida A&M led 31-3 at halftime before the Delaware State kind of put up some nice points there in the second half. A couple of record performances for FAMU. Ryan Stanley threw 4 touchdown passes, 253 yards, became FAMU's all-time passing touchdown leader. Then Xavier Smith, the wide receiver for FAMU, he had 4 touchdown passes, 9 receptions, 184 yards, and even got a helmet sticker from Joey Galloway on ESPN's college, whatever they call their final college game day final or college football final show, where Galloway gives out helmet stickers. He recognized FAMU, and that's something I've noticed. He's actually been doing that a lot. I know he shouted out Jameer Martin when 2 weeks ago when Martin had 7 rushes, 438 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So obviously, I don't know if it's Joey himself or somebody from the ESPN staff is giving him some heads up because he's recognizing the outstanding performers in black college football. So that shout out to Joey Galloway. Any thoughts on those last couple of games in the MEAC before we move over to the SWAC?
No, the MEAC is just too complex right now. Let's let another week play out, and then we'll see if we can get any clarity, or we really have to break this down.
Okay, moving over, we had two games I think that we had featured from the SWAC. We had Alabama A&M at Southern. It was Southern's homecoming. We also had UAPB at Jackson State. So the UAPB Jackson State game was Jackson State winning by a score of 21-12 over Arkansas Pine Bluff. That is now, I believe, 3 games in a row for Jackson State. They are now have improved to 4-5 overall, 3-1 in their division. UAPB drops to 5-4, 2-3 in conference play. Statistically, UAPB held to just 72 yards rushing, under 300 total yards. Jackson State, 200 yards passing, 181 on the ground, 381 total. Pretty even ball game for them. That was that game. Pretty much nothing else really significant. Jackson State plays Alabama A&M next. That'll be interesting. Speaking of that game that we talked about between Southern and Alabama A&M, it would actually go back and forth and into the fourth quarter, as there were 24 points. 24 points were scored in the fourth quarter. Actually, if you did the math here, the score at halftime, Southern had a 14-7 lead at halftime. So all of the points, you had 24 points in the second half scored by Alabama A&M, 21 points scored by Southern in the second half, and it would come down to the final closing seconds of the game. Ladarius Skelton would get a 2-yard pass from 2 yards out to take a 35-31 lead with 28 seconds left. But it's funny, Alabama A&M matriculated the ball right down the field, and I believe with maybe about 10 seconds left, 10 to 15 seconds left, actually had the ball right outside of the red zone. And unfortunately, Akeel Glass took a sack on the last play of the game, and with no timeouts, that pretty much killed the opportunity that Alabama had to possibly win the ball game. I'm thinking, is he's going to throw this ball away at the end of the game. It was actually probably the only blemish of the night for Glass. I mean, he was 29 of 37, 356 yards, threw 4 touchdown passes. He was only sacked twice. One of those was at the end of the game, as mentioned. Ibrahim for Alabama A&M had 7 catches for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. Zabrian Moore had 6 catches, 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those are by far away his top 2 receivers. Jordan Bentley, the running back for A&M, only 71 net yards and no touchdowns. So he was pretty much held in check. But for Southern, you talk about have yourself a day. Ladarius Skelton, listen to these numbers. An absolutely great game for this young man. I mean, a young man who had come under fire, really, and I'll admit, I was not having the greatest season, and I was I hate to say I was critical of the young man, but I was just pointing out that he wasn't having the kind of season I thought that many people thought he would have based off what he did last year. So passing-wise, he was 16 of 25, 198 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and then rushing. Listen to these rushing numbers. 34 attempts, 238 net yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. The longest run was 34 yards. Unbelievable day by Ladarius Skelton, accounted for 4 touchdowns and over 400 yards of offense for Southern. And I'll tell you what, AD, if Skelton is going to play like that, Southern is going to be dangerous these last couple of weeks of the season. Any thoughts on A&M and Southern before I move on, AD?
No, it's just going to be an interesting time over there in the SWAC, but thank God the SWAC is a lot easier to figure out than the BAC, because we're going to have enough problems just trying to get the BAC figured out, Brian.
Well, I'll tell you who you ought to pay attention to, and going over in the SWAC, that's going to be Grambling. And the Grambling Tigers, with a 55-20 victory over Texas Southern, who remains winless. But Grambling started the year 0-4. All they've done now is Grambling has won 4 consecutive games. They are now 4-4 and sitting. If I look at these stats, I'm looking at the standings right now. Grambling is sitting just a game and a half behind Southern. They're 1 loss out of the first place column from Southern, and as long as it remains that way, you know what that sets up. That obviously sets up the big showdown in the Bayou Classic. So for Grambling to put up 55, and one of the things that we spotlighted a few weeks back about Grambling was the fact that they were one of the conference's top rushing teams, and the fact that there really was no premier running back. I guess we should rephrase that statement, because their quarterback is their premier running back, Jeremy Hickbottom. In this game against Texas Southern, he ran the ball 15 times for 185 yards and 3 scores. And then passing, he was 16 of 23, 268, 2 touchdowns. So I meant, look at the numbers that Ladarius Skelton put up, and look at the numbers that Jeremy Hickbottom put up. And those 2 young men, I tell you, if they keep it going, all they're doing is just setting up this great epic showdown in the Bayou. I wanted to make note here, Grambling, I wrote this down, Grambling ended up with 597 yards of offense, 5 interceptions in the ball game. 5 interceptions against Texas Southern. They jumped out to a 28-0 lead, and pretty much that was all she wrote from that standpoint for Grambling. The only other game in the SWAC, Alabama State pitches a shutout against Mississippi Valley State, 27-0. And so, as I said, the standings in the SWAC, over on the east side, Alcorn State is sitting at 4-0 in conference. Sitting right behind them at 3-1 is Jackson State, who's won 3 in a row. So yeah, that pretty much is a big target that Jackson State is putting on everybody as they coming down the stretch run. Alabama State sits at 3-2 in conference, and Alabama A&M is 2-2 in conference. And then over on the western side, Southern, of course, is at 4-1 with just a 5-4 overall record. That's Southern's 5-4 overall record. And Grambling now, having won 4 games in a row, are 2-2 in conference, 4-4 overall, and it just sets up for a pretty interesting day for them. Want to make quick mention, AD, of our other FCS schools, HBCUs. Tennessee State ended up losing to Southeast Missouri State 32-13. Tennessee State now drops to 2-7. Of note, Chris Rowland, of course, who is one of the top all-purpose yardage players, top receivers in the nation. He had 7 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. He also contributed with 91 yards on the kickoff returns, 4 of them, and then he had a 13-yard punt return. So he finished with 200 yards of total offense to add to his national lead. Unfortunately, it's just not adding up to wins for Tennessee State right now, as they have a couple of games left in their season. The Hampton Pirates at a Big South finally got another win after losing a few weeks. They won just their first game in conference. Now, that's a little confusing to me, because I thought Hampton had actually, when they beat North Alabama, I thought that was a conference win, but maybe it's not. But anyway, they get a 40-17 win over Presbyterian, and running back Shy McKenzie had a career-high 152 yards for Hampton, who scored the final 20 points of the game to pull away from Presbyterian. And, yes, it is noted that it was Hampton's first win in the Big South Conference. Again, I thought they had already won a game in the Big South Conference, but it is what it is, whatever. If they say that's the first one, let that be the first one. Then congratulations, Hampton. Any FCS schools I mentioned? Any other black college schools I mentioned, AD?
Now, I think we hit them all this time, Brian. Let me get Langston.
Real quick. Yeah, Langston, good call. Langston got a win over Southwestern Assemblies of God, 21-14, a little closer score maybe than what people thought, but 2 consecutive wins. Got that win. Langston moves to 6-2, 5-1 overall. Next up, they take on Texas College. The Steers, the only other HBCU in the Sooner Athletic Conference. That game is Langston's final home game of the season, so it'll be their senior night. For Langston, Tim Whitfield, 24 carries, 100 net yards. So we'll kind of look and see. And I guess for Langston and NAIA, we'll have to kind of do a look and see what the scenarios are for them in order to get back into the NAIA playoffs, which is where they have been the last 3 seasons, I believe. And while I had them up, the Lincoln Blue Tigers, and of course Mr. Hosea Franklin, who is one of the nation's leading rushers in Division II, the Blue Tigers, did end up losing to Fort Hays State, 66-6. Conference game didn't go too well for them. But Mr. Franklin, 19 carries, 131 net yards, 1 touchdown, including an 82-yard run. And so we'll kind of do a little math later in the week to see where his numbers sit. All right. We're going to take one final break. When we come back, we'll let you know our players of the week, our players of the weekend, top performers, and then we'll be ghost. We're going to get out of here and let you know what games we're looking at for week number 11. You're listening to the BCSN Sports Wrap, our Week 10 wrap-up show. Be back right after these words.
The Black College Sports Network is proud to partner with ComputerRatings.com. That's COMPUGHTER ratings.com for the upcoming college football season. ComputerRatings.com delivers rankings, game predictions, and statistics for hundreds of professional and collegiate teams. The key feature of ComputerRatings.com is the Versus Sports Simulator, which allows users to simulate any possible matchup and view the predicted scores along with a side-by-side stats analysis. Improve your odds by signing up for a subscription. Monthly, semi-yearly, and yearly subscriptions are available. For our listeners and viewers, use the promo code BCSN19 and get 15% off of your subscription at checkout. Visit www.computerratings.com. That's COMPUTER PUGHTER, ratings.com.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford and AD Drew here. Final reminder, follow our show. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at MyBCSN, the number 1. That's also how you can find us on Facebook. Please make sure to like our page, like the BCSN Sports Wrap page as well if you can. And, of course, find us on the internet at www.mybcsn.net. All right, AD, our top performers from the weekend. We got an offense and a defensive guy, so give us your offense and defensive player from the weekend.
My offensive player of the weekend is going to be Ladarius Skelton, quarterback from Southern University. You know, over 200 yards rushing, almost 200 yards passing, and what was that, 4 touchdowns, Brian?
4 total touchdowns. 2 passing, 2 rushing.
That's going to do it for me right there. You know, anytime a quarterback gets over 200 yards rushing and you are not running a option offense, a wishbone offense, then that's impressive numbers, Brian. And on defense, it's going to be Chester Hutcherson from Tuskegee University, 18 tackles, 9 solos in the 1-point victory over Edward Waters on a high school night on Friday night this last weekend.
Right. Friday Night Lights, HBCU football style.
Yes.
My offensive players of the weekend, and notice I said players because I don't think I could give one guy the credit without mentioning the other guy, and that's the dynamic duo of Savannah State's quarterback Devon Gibbons, who in his junior season, I believe, I mean, this is a young man who in the last 2 years was running out of a spread option or a spread offense, and then in comes Coach Quinn with his triple option, his I guess what do we call it, his pistol triple option look. And anyway, taking advantage of what Gibbons does well in his running ability. And then, of course, he's got an outstanding teammate in D'Angelo Durham that I just couldn't help but look over both these guys. I mean, Durham with 148 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Gibbons with 145 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And then the fact that Gibbons, who was 5 of 8 passing, 75 yards total passing yards, but he threw 4 touchdowns. I mean, when you complete 5 passes and 4 of them are touchdowns, you're doing something right. So, Mr. Gibbons accounting for 6 scores, D'Angelo Durham rushing for Savannah State, and those two were the reason why Savannah State put up 53 on Fort Valley State and closed as the unofficial SIAC East champions. And on the defensive side, I'm going with Jalen Thomas of Miles. Miles shuts out Kentucky State 17-0. Mr. Thomas had 14 tackles. 6 of them were solo. He had 4.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. So all in all, a great day for Mr. Thomas and Miles. And now we'll see, can they do it again against Tuskegee? So for week number 11 coming up, AD, we got some interesting games, and I'm just going to read through. You pointed out some interesting games for this upcoming week. Obviously, on the lower levels, Division II levels, we've got St. Aug at Shaw, Miles at Tuskegee, Virginia Union at Virginia State, Fort Valley at Albany State, Fayetteville State at Winston-Salem State. And then on the FCS side, we spotlighted, we've got A&T at Morgan State, Jackson State at Alabama A&M, Bethune-Cookman at Delaware State, Alcorn State at Grambling State. I think that's going to be a big game, real good, exciting game. And then Norfolk State at North Carolina Central. So those are the games that we listed, and I know we were talking earlier about our 7. Any game, obviously, we've got the Division II games, AD, which I think we've got, what did we say? We got like 5 of them, if you count the 3 in one division, 2 in another.
3 in the CIAA, 2 in the SIAC. And yes, I'm getting ready to sound like a homer on this one, but the game that I'm the most interested in, obviously, is the Miles-Tuskegee game. And it looks like I'm going to miss a homecoming due to our commitment to Edward Waters this particular weekend.
It's interesting. Miles-Tuskegee is one of the games I think we both spotlighted as a potential championship elimination game, and I think we spotlighted Fort Valley Albany State as well from our preseason show. I'm just trying to think back. Yeah, so
we did.
It's interesting to see both of those come up. I think I'm most interested in the Alcorn State at Grambling State game for the simple fact that obviously Alcorn is the class of the SWAC right now, but Grambling is playing at such a high level right now that this is an opportunity to just wake everyone up in the conference, I think, for Grambling. I think a lot of people wrote Grambling off after the 0-4 start, me included, but I'll be hard pressed to find anybody playing better. The only team that might be playing better than Grambling over the past month is maybe Alcorn State. So that's the matchup that we have. And so, I don't think anybody in the MEAC is the A&Ts and Bethune. They're actually playing teams that they should be favored to beat by more than 2 touchdowns. If they don't beat them by 2 touchdowns, something's wrong. So that'll be interesting. I think South Carolina State, I don't know who they play. I know FAMU's on a bye. Howard plays South Carolina State.
Yes.
You were going to add something? You said I thought FAMU was on a bye. Are you going to tell me they're not?
No, I thought FAMU's on a bye next week.
No, I think they're on a bye this week.
Thought that looked good, right?
Yeah, no. They're on a bye this week.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but all right. Yeah, they're on a bye this week.
All right.
So,
one other thing before I get out of here, Brian.
For sure.
We get out of here, Go give you my votes for the FCS top 5. We did the D2 earlier. At number 5, new into the polls. First time we've had them in the polls this year. And my poll is going to be Jackson State. Number 4 is going to be Bethune. Number 3 is going to be A&T. Number 2 is Alcorn. And number 1, none other than the Rattlers of Florida A&M University.
Wait a minute. Say that again.
Jackson State 5, Bethune 4, A&T 3, Alcorn 2, FAMU 1.
So you put who'd you put out?
I dropped South Carolina State.
Okay. You put Jackson State in there.
Yes. They're playing good ball right now.
Are they playing better ball than Grambling?
I think so. Today, they are. Both teams are on the roll, Brian.
Grambling's on a 4-game win streak.
Yeah,
Grambling's on Jackson State's on a 3-game win streak.
3-game win streak, exactly. I said both teams are rolling right now. I just like the Jackson State team just a little bit better than I like the Grambling team, and I'd like the situation Jackson State is in a little bit better than Grambling's. I think Jackson State's in a little bit of a better situation to make a impact on everybody. So that's why I voted with Jackson State.
Okay. All right. Well, you're entitled to your vote. I won't bash it too bad. I'll go from 5 to 1. I'll go Grambling at 5, Bethune at 4, A&T at 3, Alcorn at 2, and FAMU at 1. And so we'll debate the whole Grambling, Jackson State, Southern, all of that can be debated as who's the 5th team, and we'll see what happens.
All right.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition. Our week number 10 wrap-up show has been wrapped, and so that's going to do it for this one. For AD Drew, I'm Brian Fulford. Thank you for listening and downloading, and please make sure to share this with at least 2 people. Find 2 people, 2 fans of HBCUs, or 2 alums, or 2 friends just in general. Let them know about these 2 guys who love talking about Black college football and athletics, if you would. And make sure to find the Black College Sports Network online, mybcsn.net, or on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at mybcsn1. Thank you, and God bless, and we will see you later in the week, getting ready for week number 11. Peace out.
Put a ribbon on it. I'll holler.
The real reason why I went after Comcast and Charter, it didn't have anything to do with my cable networks. It didn't. What happened was a gentleman wanted to do the Black College Sports Network in partnership with the HBCUs, and Comcast did not accept it, and that would have made a lot of money for these black colleges. Absolutely. And it would have educated the Black College Sports Network. This is what he wanted to do. That would have educated a lot of black kids. And when they didn't do that, that's when I came off the bench and said, okay, I'm going to light you up like a Christmas tree. Okay? That was the real reason why I got into it, was when I saw what happened with the Black College Sports Network, which I don't know. I just knew that these black, all right? I knew that these black colleges were going to benefit, and these black kids were going to get the education that they deserved and not have to pay.
But you stay hard.